About it's congenital heart disease week. It's such an important week to raise awareness. I actually had the opportunity to speak to one mother who was doing just that. Her name is Sarah Bowes, and her young daughter Meadow was born with a congenital heart defect, and she is sharing her story, and it's a really impactful one, especially if you or someone you know has a heart defect. I want you to listen in on our interview that we did together.
My daughter Meadow was born with a congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot, which is a very fancy name to say that she has four different heart defects. And so, because of that, her medical care really started immediately for us. And she had her first heart surgery at just 6 days old. And when we received her diagnosis, we learned she was not only going to need at least two heart surgeries by the time that she was a year old to even have a chance at a full life, but that she would also go on to have open heart surgeries throughout the remainder of her life as well. So even with a healthcare background, because I am a family nurse practitioner, I don't think there's anything that can really prepare you for hearing and living that reality as a parent. And so I had a baseline understanding of what congenital heart disease was from a clinical standpoint, but really living it as a parent showed me where families really need more support and clear communication and better systems and kind of the overarching system. And that really drives a lot of my advocacy work today.
When you first received that news that your daughter was going to be battling this massive illness, what was your thought?
My first thought actually was life expectancy. Coming from that medical standpoint, I'm like, okay, what are her odds at a full, healthy life? What does that look like? And at the time when I put it into Google, it just wasn't available. And the reason that is because in 2009, it was the first time in history that there were more adults living with congenital heart disease than children. And what that statistic actually means is it was the first time that these children were living into adulthood. And so in the grand scheme of things, like this is kind of a relatively new area of medicine in the sense of now we're able to treat it in ways that we weren't able to in the past. And things are evolving and changing and innovating all the time. And I think that's a really cool part of CHD too.
And you've also been working heavily with the American Heart Association. Can you kind of talk about some of your work you've done with them?
Yes, absolutely. So I do all kinds of things with the American Heart Association and other organizations that touch congenital heart disease from different perspectives. But with the AHA specifically, I did their Woman of Impact campaign last year in honor of my daughter. I really, the Woman of Impact campaign shines a spotlight on women's health. And I was like, what better way to spotlight, the long-term vision of CHD and what I hope changes by focusing on my daughter's health, because she is a woman who is going to grow up. And what does that look like for her and her ongoing medical care? So I actually placed nationally in that campaign last year for my fundraising efforts, which was incredible. But on a more day-to-day basis, I do our local heart walk. I participate in anything they would like me to be a part of and just kind of spread the message, congenital heart disease, it is most common birth defect. So it affects 1 in 100, but it's also one of the very least funded. And so any ways that I can inspire change, I am always trying to.
Yeah, and you've also done some work with trying to pass legislation as well.
Oh, yeah. I'm a part of an incredible organization that actually just launched last week for Heart Month called Every 100th Heart. And that organization has brought together literally organizations from all across the country, the American Heart Association being involved in that as well, to create this unified voice in Washington, D.C., and get more funding and ultimately get more research and get the change and innovation that these kids need.
And what inspired you? I see something special. The book behind you, I see your daughter's name on there. Obviously, she was the inspiration behind it. Can you kind of talk about what made you want to create this book?
Absolutely. So this is my book, Meadow and Her Four-Leaf Clover Heart. And when Meadow was born with her set of congenital heart defects, I think first and foremost, our focus was survival. Survival, the medical care, how do we get through this tough patch? And without realizing it, we kind of started shaping a story in our own minds, which would inadvertently be in hers as well, about what her life might look like and what might be off limits. And I think over time, what I've really noticed is how powerful those early stories are, but especially for children. And we really, me and my husband both, we wanted to give Meadow an opportunity to grow up with a very like clear, age appropriate understanding of her heart. And so we want a story that explains it honestly because I mean, it's a real reality for us. But I never want in any way for her heart to become her entire identity. And so Meadow and her four leaf clover heart really comes from that place. And my hope is that it helps children and families understand that while your heart defect is part of your story, it is definitely not the entire story, and that they can still imagine a full life. And for me, this book is just really another form of advocacy because at its core, it is about changing the narrative that we give kids from the very beginning. And I really hope that Meadow grows up with confidence.
Yeah. And what is the response from other parents, maybe in a similar situation, and they read this book, and what are they telling you?
It has been so fun for me because, as I talked about, I want her heart defect to be a part of her, but not all of her. And the book really reflects that as well. Like, you see Meadow playing, you see Meadow going to doctor's appointments, you see her in the hospital setting, but you see her kind of coming in and out. You see her spending time with friends. And so they really like the picture that I've painted of kind of the duality of the experience. Like, yes, we're going to have these harder moments, but we're also going to have this life outside of this too, and kind of painting that possibility.
And what does Meadow think of it, the star?
I was so grateful last week. I was kind of having a tough day, and Meadow actually pulled one of the original copies out of the backseat of my car up into her car seat. And she said, Mom? And I was like, what? She said, this is my favorite book. And I was like, oh. But I love seeing what kind of pages that she lingers on. She definitely lingers on the page of her and her doctor, which is actually a replica of a picture of her last year with her cardiologist. And they're listening to each other's hearts with stethoscopes at the same time. So that's really cool. But she also really lingers on the friendship page, which is a page of several children with heart defects together and kind of uniting their stories. So that's been really sweet and really beautiful for me.
I appreciate your time so much. Is there any more you want to add or tell me I may have missed out on?
No, I think the primary thing is just knowing, especially during CHD Awareness Week. As I said, it is the most common birth defect, but it's one of the very least funded. And the only way that we can change that is through awareness. And so I tell people all the time, like, the simplest way to get involved, and I know it sounds too simple, but just do the thing, is just telling people that statistic. And I think when people hear the reality of it and let that sink in, that really changes how we move forward.
A question I just thought of. When you talk to Meadow, how, first of all, is she doing, and what does she want for her life? Does she hope to grow up to be a certain something? What is she thinking about these days?
You're going to love this, and it is so
Okay.
silly. So first of all, Meadow is 3.5 today. She's incredible. We hope that she has another year or two before her next surgery. So, I mean, that is part of our life. We know that's coming. But if you were to ask Meadow today where she wants to work and what she wants to do when she grows up, she
Uh-huh.
would tell you the dishwasher. And you would be like, what in the world does that even mean? But that's what she calls the car wash. And she loves going to the car wash. She loves the smells and the sounds and the colors. And I just love that.
That is
It like
unique.
makes me burst out laughing every time she says it. I'm like, of course, the dishwasher. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing more about your daughter's incredible story and doing the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate